Imagine waking up at 4 in the morning, not to the sound of your cattle, but to the sound of your perimeter fence being cut for the third time this week. For most of us, the border is a headline, but for a rancher in southern Arizona or Texas, it is literally their backyard.
Exactly, Efka. It is a completely different reality when the geopolitical issues of two nations are playing out on your private property. We often talk about the border as this abstract concept, but for the people living there, it is a daily struggle between security, livelihood, and humanity.
That is such a powerful way to put it, Robin. I want to dive deep into this today. When we hear US-Mexico border, most people immediately think of walls or political debates, but what does it actually mean to be a rancher in that environment?
Well, first, we have to understand what a ranch actually is. It's not just a small farm. These are massive tracts of land where cattle, horses, or sheep are raised. A rancher isn't just a farmer. They are managers of vast territories that often share a direct line with Mexico.
So they are essentially the first line of contact? That sounds incredibly stressful. I mean, if I had strangers walking through my garden every night, I'd be on edge, let alone thousands of acres of remote land.
It is stressful, and it creates a very complex relationship with immigration. You see, many of these ranchers actually rely on immigrant labor. They need workers for the tough agricultural jobs that are hard to fill locally. So they aren't necessarily anti-immigrant in the way the media might portray them.
Wait, that's a really interesting distinction, Robin. Why do some ranchers support legal immigration so strongly while being so vocally opposed to illegal immigration? It seems like a contradiction at first glance.
It's about order and the safety, Efka. From my perspective, the rancher sees legal immigration through things like the H-2A visa as a win-win. It provides a legal, documented workforce. Illegal immigration, however, often brings property damage, trash, and the shadow of the cartels.
The cartels, that's where it gets dangerous, right? We aren't just talking about people looking for a better life anymore. We are talking about organized crime. How do the cartels impact the local communities and the migrants themselves?
It's devastating, honestly. Cartels control the routes. They exploit migrants through human trafficking, often charging thousands of dollars for a safe passage that is anything but safe. They also use these same routes for drug trafficking, which puts ranchers and their families in the crossfire of law enforcement and criminals.
It is important to acknowledge that the migrants are often victims here too. They are fleeing desperate situations, right? Why would someone choose to cross a dangerous desert illegally if they knew the risks?
One could argue that the push factors, like extreme poverty, violence, or lack of opportunity at home, are simply more terrifying than the pull factors of the desert. When you have nothing to lose, a dangerous journey looks like a rational choice, even if it's life-threatening.
That makes sense, but it leads to a massive logistical nightmare for the Border Patrol. I mean, how do they even begin to manage thousands of miles of rugged terrain? It feels like an impossible task.
It really is a game of cat and mouse. Border Patrol officers are stretched thin, trying to balance national security with humanitarian duties. Sometimes they are catching criminals, and other times they are providing life-saving water to an asylum seeker who got lost in the heat.
You mentioned asylum seekers. Can we clarify the difference between them and, say, someone coming over on a green card? I think the terminology gets mixed up a lot in public discourse.
That's a great point, Efka. A legal immigrant with a green card has gone through a years-long process to live and work in the U.S. permanently. An asylum seeker is someone who arrives and asks for protection because returning to their home country would be dangerous due to persecution or war.
So, seeking asylum is a legal right under international law, but the sheer volume of people doing it at the border creates this huge backlog, right? It sounds like the system is just buckling under the pressure.
Exactly. The issue is far more complex than just building a wall or opening the gates. There is no one-size-fits-all solution. When the legal pathways, like the H-2A visa for agricultural workers, are too slow or too limited, it inadvertently pushes people toward illegal routes.
Let's talk more about that H-2A visa. You said it's for agricultural workers. If ranchers need workers and people want to work, why isn't that program just expanded to solve the labor shortage and reduce illegal crossings?
Well, some argue that expanding it would help, but others worry about the long-term consequences. There are concerns about wage depression for local workers or the administrative burden on small farms. Plus, it's a temporary visa, so it doesn't solve the desire for permanent residency.
It's like every solution creates a new set of questions. I'm thinking about the ranchers again. They are stuck in the middle. They need the workers, they fear the cartels, and they are watching the political polarization from their front porch.
And the media representation doesn't always help, right? Often, news reports focus on the most extreme cases, either the most violent crimes or the most tragic humanitarian stories. This policy raises ethical concerns because it simplifies a very nuanced reality for the sake of a headline.
I agree. It makes it hard for the general public to have a balanced view. Evidence suggests that most people just want a functional system where people can work legally and the border is secure. It sounds so simple when you say it like that, but the execution is where it falls apart.
Balancing security with humanitarian responsibilities is incredibly challenging. You have property rights of the ranchers on one side and the human rights of the migrants on the other. Both are valid, and both are often in direct conflict at the border.
So, Robin, if you were a policymaker, where would you even start? Do you focus on the economics, the security, or the humanitarian side? It feels like you can't fix one without the others.
Honestly, Efka, most experts agree it has to be a multi-pronged approach. You need better technology for border security to stop the cartels, but you also need to reform the legal immigration system so people don't feel forced to cross the desert. You have to address why they are leaving their homes in the first place.
It's interesting how a discussion about a ranch in Texas quickly becomes a discussion about global economics and human rights. It really shows how interconnected everything is. The rancher's cut fence is just a symptom of a much larger global fever.
That is a perfect analogy. The fence is the symptom. The fever is the combination of economic disparity, regional instability, and a legal system that hasn't been updated in decades to reflect modern labor needs.
I'm struck by the aha moment here, that immigration isn't just one issue. It's a labor issue, a safety issue, and a humanitarian issue, all wrapped into one. We can't just pick the part we like and ignore the rest.
Exactly. And for the students listening, this is why using advanced language to discuss these topics is so important. You can't just say it's good or it's bad. You have to use phrases like, it is important to acknowledge, or the long-term consequences may include.
Right. It forces you to think more deeply. So, as we wrap up, what is the one big takeaway for someone who wants to understand the border better beyond the sound bites?
I would say, look for the human element on both sides. Look at the rancher who just wants to protect their family and land, and look at the migrant who is risking everything for a chance at a life we often take for granted. The truth is usually found somewhere in the middle of those two stories.
That's a powerful place to end. It leaves us with a lot to think about. Is a border a wall, a bridge, or a wound? Maybe it's all three at once. Thanks for joining me today, Robin. This was truly eye-opening.
My pleasure, Efka. It's a conversation that definitely needs more nuance and less noise. I hope this helps everyone see the complexity of the situation.
To our listeners, we leave you with this. How would your perspective change if your own backyard became the front line of a global crisis? Think about it, and we'll see you next time.